What's good, everyone? This is Dr. Nee Darko. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below so that you're always up to date on the new uploads as well as alerts on this show. The other thing that you can do to help build this community is make sure you leave a comment below. Let us know what you like, what you don't like about the show, and ultimately, let us know who's winning these arguments, because I need to know that I'm beating Renee in these debates. Run the tape. So, Jordan, listen, to get that in depth, I felt like you were like Leonardo DiCaprio in Inception. I don't know how the hell you were able to piece all of this stuff together, but it makes so much sense. Is this something, you could tell me, Nico, kick rocks, but is this something that you went through? Because you're...
Oh, God, yes.
The level of detail, the level of, almost like you're coloring it in vivid color. Listen. I can see what you're talking about. Did you go through this?
My father died when I was 7. Suddenly, brain aneurysm, collapsed and died. He was a doctor. I thought I could cosmically fix the world by walking in his footsteps and becoming a doctor too. And so my version of Big P purpose was I was going to fill his place and cosmically fix his death. And so guess what I did? I went to medical school. I became a physician. And you know what happened? It didn't fix his death. I was struggling with meaning. I thought I was responsible for his death. And I thought if I just became better, if I just became a doctor like him, if I just saved enough lives, it would cosmically fill the gap. I would finally be enough. It wouldn't be my fault my dad died. And it didn't work. And I became a doctor, and my dad was still dead, and I didn't feel any better about it. I had to go back and rewrite the narrative of my childhood and say, my dad died. It was a horrible thing, but I wasn't responsible for it. I was just a good kid in a bad situation. And not only that, but I heroically came through a learning disability, picked things up, supported my mom and my family, and still was able to become a doctor and help people. So I changed that narrative. I changed my sense of meaning. I started to realize I was always enough. Even though my dad died, I was enough then. And so I didn't have to prove in the present and future that I was enough anymore, which means this version of purpose that was not filling me up, being a doctor, I no longer had to pursue it. I no longer had to prove anything. So I could then do what I think we all should do with purpose, is start looking at the present and future and start thinking about, well, what actions really would fill me up? And that looked like blogging and podcasting and writing and public speaking, all of these things that were deeply important to me. And so, why did I write this book? Because this is my story. This is my struggle. And I feel that it's not just my struggle. It's a lot of our struggles. Look, we all know tons of people who are exceedingly successful. They're good at their jobs. They're married. They have kids. They have great relationships, good friendships. They make a lot of money. And guess what? A lot of them still aren't happy.
Oh, you can see it in their face. You can see it in their actions.
Why aren't they happy?
Yeah. That's a question that I see that a lot. I think you see that in medicine a lot. Right? Yeah. I've been noticing that, you work in hospice. With me, this is the time of year that I feel like hospice for trauma goes through the roof, right? Because we're in the cold months. We don't see the GSW, the gunshots. We're not seeing the stab wounds. Nobody's on a motorcycle anymore. And the traumas that you normally see get replaced by the traumas that are the ground level falls, the slips on ice. Granny is at home. Granny falls at the nursing home. And if I can tell you how many conversations I've had in person or on the phone about end of life issues, clarifying advanced directives, the generic Walmart type advanced directive that says if I'm in a terminal position, I don't want artificial things. And it's like, well, but we're not there, guys. She has a subdural and she could recover, but that's not necessarily a terminal condition. And walking families through that, it's a very fascinating concept to talk to, in essence, children, but they're grown adults, and kind of talk to them about what their mother or their father would want. And I know you talk about this thing called the generational trauma effect, or this generational trauma that occurs, and things that you've buried as a child are the things that you're going to deal with as an adult. And I see that all the time. It's very interesting. You mentioned that in your previous, what you were talking about with Elon Musk, or possibly even with you, and the steps that you took to become a doctor to kind of erase some of the pain, but you realize at the end it's still there. I see that. talking to families.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see that between siblings who are still arguing, and siblings who are in their 50s and they're still arguing about things that they should have put away when they were, it's very amazing to see this while mom is recovering. So go ahead, please.
Let's turn that around, though. We know, and you see in your job, and I see all the time, the effects of generational trauma. We hand down trauma from generation to generation. Here's what no one asks. What's the opposite of generational trauma? It's what I call generational growth. Generational growth is, instead of handing down these bad scripts, these scripts that don't serve us, these scripts that make us unhappy, what if you could hand down good scripts and actually bring about generational growth? And here's the fantastic thing. You know how you do that? You do things that light you up. Little P purpose. How do you pass on generational growth? How do you undo generational trauma? You start doing things you love doing that light you up, and you let your kids and family and friends see you doing those things. And that's how we break that cycle. There's two ways to break that cycle. One is you got to do what's called narrative therapy. Go back, look at the cycle, realize that it's a bad cycle, and start rewriting the story such that you were the hero and you can step out of that trauma, right? That's a piece of it. But the other piece is filling that in with generational growth. And so what we want to really do is not model for our parents that trauma that we kept on getting passed down from generation to generation. If we're cognizant of it, we want to start doing these little P purpose things that light us up and have our kids see that, because what that does is it gives them permission to live a life in which they become lit up as adults too, doing things they love. So just before you and I went live on air, I saw your son ducking around your podcast setup. Like, he sees you doing this thing that's deeply important to you, that lights you up, that you get excited to do. That's generational growth. One day he's going to say, Dad and Mom did this thing. Maybe I'll try it on. See how it fits me. Maybe it does fit me. And like them, I'm going to pursue this thing that lights me up. Maybe it doesn't fit me, but you're passing down that modeling. And so we talk about generational trauma a lot, but almost no one ever talks about generational growth. And that's that impact and legacy. That's that little P purpose, not just changing you and the people around you, but changing people for decades and generations. And I can give you tons of stories of people who've done just that. Their little P purpose led to generational growth, which led to impact and legacy far after that person leaves the earth.
Man, there it is, Jordan. Guys. So listen, everyone, we're going to have the Purpose Code, the link to Purpose Code, anywhere where you can get it, mainly on Amazon. Listen, Jordan, sheesh, I wasn't expecting to get, woo! Listen, once again, where do I send my bill for this therapy session? Because this was like that. This was an amazing discussion. I always find your comments, I always find your insight to be extremely profound, yet very grounded. There's times where people talk over people's heads, but I always feel like whenever we talk, like, I feel like you're kind of talking, like we're kind of kindred spirits, and there's things that you're going through that I go through. And I think in general, when people listen to your episodes, they say, damn, he is speaking to me, which I think from even a podcaster standpoint, that's something I always try to get to. And I really appreciate and I appreciate your skill and your ability to do that. So I have to give you props for doing that. But the Purpose Code, give us one quick, let's say 5 sentence or however long, what quick way can you leave people, to let them know that, hey, this is the book that they should go and get, please.
People think they can fix their life with their finances and come to people like you and I. And when they first come to us, they're like, oh my God, this is so difficult. I have no idea what to do with this. And then they listen to us for a long time and they're like, oh, there are these steps I can take. I can figure out my finances and I'm good. Purpose is exactly the same. Up to this point, most people think of purpose as just something so hard to reach and ephemeral and difficult because no one has broken it down as simple as our finances. I believe you can take these solid steps I talk about in the book. You can build a life of purpose, and I think ultimately it'll lead to happiness.
Boom. There it is. All right, Jordan, thank you again for coming on the show. Guys, I'm going to be checking out this book. As a matter of fact, I've already reserved it. So when it comes out January 7th, I'll be getting it shortly afterwards. Jordan, this is really, I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking about this topic. I think actually what I'll do is, if you're okay with this, I'm going to read the book and then maybe at a certain interval, if you're free, have you come back on and I could talk about, some of the things that I've learned from this book. And I always do like a book review afterwards on the show anyway. So would love to have you come back and kind of discuss this. So happy holidays to you. Happy New Year. And thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.